Well, hello, comrades. Welcome to this afternoon's WIN meeting. If you've read your notice, you'll know that we've got today with us Fadil Takori, who's a physicist, socialist and trade union activist now living in Britain. He was born in Palestine and educated in refugee camp. So Fadil is going to outline the path of the Palestinian struggle. So the displacement of earlier social tendencies and possible perspective for the future. So would you like to go ahead, Fadil?
Well, thank you, comrades, and thank you for the invitation. Just quickly about myself, I was born in a village, became infamous for its jail called Farah in the 80s of the last century, went to school in Farah refugee camp, one of the UNRWA schools. Grew up on the diet of, in the 60s, of listening to man invading the moon and one small step for man, a great giant step for mankind. So I was fascinated by physics and astronomy, and I decided to do physics from childhood. I went to Birzeit University and Manchester and then the Imperial College. But as a Palestinian, the issue of justice and the struggle remains in your DNA. You can never wash it away. So over all my life, really, I was involved in the left and the labor movement. I arrived in the UK in the 80s under Thatcher, and the advice I got is to join a trade union, which I did. That's enough of me. Let's talk about for the last 30 years, me included. At the beginning, I was excited about the Oslo Agreement, and I for one, mistakenly, I have supported it. We believed that it's an agreement that would lead to the two states, Palestinian state and an Israeli state, at least for the time being, living alongside each other in security, peace, and prosperity. Instead of that, we are where we are. I would like to share with you a slide which gives a little bit about the economic situation of that part of the world over the years. So before the Oslo Agreement, and I put here three different items: the Jordan, the Palestinians, and the Israeli GDP per capita. And if we notice at that time, the situation is a Palestinian was on an average of $1,200. A Jordanian was on about $1,600 in the 80s, and an Israeli on about $7,000. As we approach the 1995, the Jordanians were on about $1,700, the Palestinians on $1,600, and the Israelis on about $16,000. Again, a quick picture of what was happening before the Oslo Agreement. The sectors of the economy, agriculture was about between 30 and 40% of the Palestinian economy, the local agriculture. The manufacturing was an average of 10%, services 20 to 30%. A very crucial item is labor in Israel, which was about 40%. And construction wasn't really counting for much. I want to contrast that with now. Now, agriculture is about 3%. Manufacturing remained roughly the same. Services exploded. And when I say here services, employees at the Palestinian Authority, teaching, health sector, it's now arguably about 80% of the economy. Labor in Israel, again, it's a controlled item. At the moment, it's restricted, and construction have completely disappeared. So how did we get here over the last 30 years? It was intended to have two states alongside each other, living in peace and prosperity. The truth of the matter is Israel had complete control over finance, borders, water, energy, and movement and security. The Palestinians, they were aware of this, and they were aware of the risks. The Palestinian authorities and the Palestinian negotiators, they were aware of the risks in the Oslo agreement and in the Paris Accord, but they were counting on the international community that they would hold the Israelis to be quote unquote reasonable. Also, they were counting on time and demography, that the generation of war, the generation of establishing the state would slowly disappear, and a more reasonable generation, a more politically aware generation would come along. But that didn't work. And what we have is actually the Israeli community moved to the right, and we end up with complete control over the West Bank and Gaza. We had a number of confrontations that resulted in Gaza being, to a degree, isolated, and I would say deliberate isolation from West Bank. Two systems were created to create an inner struggle between the Palestinians themselves. Israel used a number of tools to achieve what it wants. The hard end of the tools, which is land grabs and settlement, roadblocks, arrests, and assassinations. But most important, into my mind, were the soft tools. And these soft tools were finance. They control the banking system. They also control the money coming into the Palestinian Authority hands by the Palestinian had to go into what we call a custom union. And that custom union is not two equal parties. It's a master and a slave sort of relation. The other item is they resort to control of water resources. The Palestinians have, before 1995, they had access to surface water and some wells, which were sort of, in a very strange way, sustaining the agriculture and sustaining the communities. The Israelis control the water resources, so Palestinians have no access to water in a free way. They couldn't access the water when they wanted to. The other tool they used is market disruption. And market disruption is when a Palestinian farmer produces, let's say, for example, oranges or tomatoes, the Israelis would either, depends on the produce or on the season. If the season is the summer, then checkpoints will appear in the Jordan Valley, where it's the breadbasket. And these checkpoints would result in the produce being spoiled unless it's sold to Israel. Again, another tool, flooding the Palestinian market with Israeli goods or with Turkish goods or South African goods, that would undermine completely the Palestinian produce. I remember in the late 80s, olive oil was a very successful product for the Palestinians. And all of a sudden, olive oil from Spain became at about 85% of the price of a Palestinian olive oil. So all these items were used to disrupt the market. The other more dangerous way is the psychological warfare. which is, I think there is a prime minister here who used to be Tony Blair. He actually directed the banking sector. He gave them lectures, and these are documented, on how we create, we remove the capacity for violence and for organization. And the way to do that is to get everybody involved in a loan. And that loan is anything from purchasing a nice car for $10,000 or $20,000, or even purchasing a mobile phone or a wedding ceremony, involving the Palestinian youth in loans. The ease with which these loans was phenomenal. You could have borrowed $10,000 in Nablus without any collateral, without any means of paying it. So that affected the capacity of Palestinians to resist. The other thing is the capacity of the establishment to give privileges and restrictions. If you are malleable, you got privileges. If you're not, then things become difficult. Very quickly as well, they changed the education standards with the cooperation of the Palestinian Authority. Again, the Palestinian Authority did not stop or got involved in the inner conflicts between Fatah, Hamas, the left, the Popular Front, the communists. The Palestinian society became more at edge from within. And the biggest thing I've noticed is the left, or the intellectuals, got hollowed out of, or their influence got hollowed out from having any impact on the society. First by the Palestinian Authority themselves, because they saw themselves at a conflict with the left, by the people who saw the left as intellectual competitors, i.e. the religious element of the Palestinian society, but also those who played a major role in hollowing out the left is the NGOs. One thing I'm grateful to Trump for is killing the USAID, really, because these NGOs gave the Palestinian left, they absorbed the intellectual capacity, and they gave the feeling of, yeah, things are going to be all right. We're trying here, a little bit in supporting the children in refugee camps, a little bit of supporting women or people with special needs. That absorbed the capacity of the left, or kept them busy. So everybody got, shared in a little bit of undermining and hollowing the Palestinian of the capacity to struggle. Where we are now, and this is the bottom. This slide tells us where we are, and some of these figures are estimates, but they're not far off. In, let's say, 2020, the Jordan GDP is about $4,000. The Palestinian GDP is about $3,000, and Israeli GDP is $44,000. So the prosperity element of Oslo only happened to one side. Currently, because of the struggle, the Palestinian GDP is about $3,000 or less. The Israeli GDP is about $54,000. And this is a lot more than what we have in Europe. How do they achieve that? So the Oslo Accord gave them the opportunity, gave them the tools, if you like, to remain the oppressors without any responsibilities. remove the responsibility of the occupation away to the hands of the Palestinian Authority and give them the opportunity to prosper.
Fidel, you've been talking about 15 minutes now. Okay.
Okay, this is my last
Okay.
slide. It's just to give you the current situation of food, water, and energy security we have in Palestine. In Gaza, the energy security is, and I'm not talking here months, we have days, 7 days maximum. In West Bank, because of the agreements between the companies, they destroyed the Palestinian energy companies. The West Bank is ours, literally ours. Israel could switch the lights off at any time they want. There is about 15% local production of solar power. Water security in Gaza, they destroyed the salination plant. And we think it's days. Some people say it's hours. In West Bank, again, Makarot took over 85% of the supply. It's water in Palestinian lands, but because of the A, B, and C, it's the Israelis have access to the water, and water security is about 2 to 7 days. Food security in Gaza, 1 to 3 days. Now, because of the war, it's a lot less than that. But also in West Bank, it's 7 to 10 days. Because agriculture has been destroyed, storage is complete, and because of the custom union, anything that comes into Palestine have to pass through Israeli import point and checkpoints. So where do we go from here? I don't know. And I do not feel I'm qualified enough to give a solution, but this is the current picture. Oslo agreement did one thing, achieved prosperity for Israel, kept the Palestinian, removed all reasons of sustainability or capacity to resist. We have a Palestinian community which is isolated, can be hungry, can be thirsty, and will live in darkness unless there is intervention from the outside world, because the current balance is the Israelis are not going to be all of a sudden change their attitudes towards the Palestinian people. On that, I will open myself to questions if there are any.
Well, thanks for that, Fidel. My reaction is that, in an already horrific situation, looking at those figures really does add a whole new dimension to it. So I'm sure there's lots of questions and comments the comrades will want to make. So can you stick your electronic hand if you want to come in, comrades, please? Everybody's having a think.
I deliberately did not want to talk about blood. I wanted to talk about the economy, and that would result to where we are.
Okay, thank you. Right, Finn, you've got your hand up. Would you like to come in?
Yeah, that's a very interesting contribution, Fadil, that you made. There's a couple of questions I wanted to ask. I paid a visit myself to the West Bank some years ago, and we were in Nablus, Ramallah, Hebron, these places. And the questions to ask, by the way, 4 of our group were extradited straight away. They were blocked at the airport and sent home from Tel Aviv. So they didn't want us being there. But nonetheless, a few questions. First of all, with regard to Palestinian farmers producing, say, olives, figs, and so on. They are denied often access to the land where the crops grow because of the procedures and that. But is there a possibility, in terms of perspective and fighting against the occupation, of the farmers refusing to sell their produce to Israel? Is that a possible issue that might be raised? Something else I wanted to ask was in relation to the Palestinian Front in the past, the Front for the Liberation of Palestine. Did that have a strong socialist and left-wing influence, and where did it go to subsequently? Because Fatah
Thanks, Finny. If we take a couple of more contributions and then Fidel might like to come back and comment. Norma, would you like to go next?
Hello, thank you very much for this very interesting presentation information. I have two questions, perhaps trivial, but I think from outside is important. One, after having described this situation, mainly economic, what do you see, or what do you could like to propose for inside and Palestinians, and for outside, like us, to do, says, under quotation marks, something of positive, to change or to contribute. And the second point in the same direction is also what do you propose we can do, I mean, we are doing, but it's very important what you can say about education for insight, particular childs, and also for universities, and also the universities in outside to do. I am mentioning that because there are movements, but for a link to university in Palestina, and along the world, I am saying. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Norma. Aman.
Hi, apologies, I can't turn my camera on. We got a problem with the net. But just a quick question, and that was, well, two questions, if I may. One was with regard to the workers in terms of gatherings and unions that there are in petrochemicals or industries like that, because that is also part of the overall idea, I think probably in West Bank mostly. That if you could give us any information on that, that would be very good.
I did not.
Thanks, Aman.
Can you repeat, please, which workers?
Yeah, the ones who are in the complexes like the petrochemicals, gas, oil, because they probably, I'm not sure to what extent actually their output is considered as part of the GDP. There was also another question, and that is, especially when it comes to several of these Islamic groups that were there and are there, they do actually have got some input. Obviously, Israel and the governing body, Mahmoud Abbas, etc., in Israel have got a different relationship. But there is a lot of issues in terms of money, etc., which is said to be flowing in and out within the area of especially West Bank and before mostly in Gaza. To what extent have they actually been able to overcome some of the normal routine relations in terms of the economy in the Palestinian sections or territories, rather?
Right, thanks, Aman. I wonder if we should just give Fidel a chance to just respond to that before I bring Matthew in, because that's quite a lot of questions. You want to do that now, Fidel?
All right. Well, the first question from Finn, thank you. Would the Palestinian farmers refuse to sell their products to the Israelis? I think the Palestinian farmers, most of the times, they don't have a choice, really, because if the produce is soft product, which can be can perish in a few days, what the Israeli tactics is to set up a checkpoint just outside the farms. And these checkpoints simply say, oh, there is a security alert. So your tomatoes in 3 days in the Jordan Valley becomes not some dried tomato, but becomes a health hazard. The same with oranges, with any perishable goods. With non-fast perishable goods like almonds or cereals or olive oils, which is very little in the economy at the moment, it's the competition from the outside markets is usually deployed to destroy the economic value of such products. Let me give you an example of olive oil. It costs in local currency 16 shekels to produce a kilogram of olive oil in terms of labor and processing. Olive oil in the market is about 18 shekels. So the farmer, the landowner, earns only 2 shekels, which is about $0.50 per kilogram of olive oil. When you compare it to the French, to the Italian, the Greeks, the Tunisian, the margins are completely not sustainable. The other part of Finn's question is, where did the socialists go? There was in the 80s when there was a very strong, historically, the first communist, one of the first communist parties to be established in the Middle East was 1922, I think, or 24. in Palestine and Haifa, and it was a partnership between the communists who came from Europe, Jewish communists and Palestinian communists. Where did the left go? As I said earlier, the left have it from four places really. First of all, the internal strife between Fatah and the left. Second, the strife between the religious establishments and the left, but also the international community through the NGOs and USAID absorbed all the intellectual capacity of a direct struggle into let's focus on children issues, let's focus on women issues. And that's where the left disappeared. And those who refused to play this game, I'm afraid they ended up in jail or got killed. So that's where the left gone. It's a sustained attack from more than one place. There is still elements of the left. There is still an official communist party, but unfortunately it's part of the BLO. They're receiving their $100,000 every year from the Palestinian Authority to be sustainable. So would you consider that an official left? I don't know. The Popular Front, their big cadre got killed, most of them. And those who refuse to play, they are languishing in jails. I'm sure you know about the Jaradat, Saadat, and Rashid, the lady who has just been released as a skeleton, really. That's where they live. The workers who work inside Israel, at the moment, they're prevented from going in. Completely prevented. And those who find a way of smuggling themselves, who have a relationship with an Israeli contractor, some of them get smuggled in. If they found inside Israel, they could face a 20,000 shekels fine and a 6 months jail if they're not killed. So very few undocumented workers manage to go and work in Israel. Pre-95, their contribution to the economy was about 40% of the economy. The construction trade union, there is a trade union in Palestine, but unfortunately, or the way it's recently, there was an election of one student union, and Fatah got, and not 99%, but they got about 85% of the vote. So the trade union movement, I'm afraid, is dominated by the Palestinian Authority, and every trick in the book is deployed to prevent the trade unions from being an independent representative of the workers. Recently, there is a trade union for the engineering professions, Naqabt al-Muhandisin, they call it. All engineering is under one union. And all of a sudden, the guy who won in the elections with the support of the Palestinian Authority ended up a minister in the previous government responsible for labor and contracting. So the trade union who leads the medicine doctors and associated proficiencies was the representative of Fatah in Moscow not long ago. So the trade union movement, on the face of it, is dominated by the authorities. However, it's not all doom and gloom. Some of small sections of the trade unions still the left have influence. Fortunately, they are vocal. Fortunately, they are they have the more intellectual capacity and more determination to be influential. But could they make the difference? I doubt it in these current situation. As you mentioned, the rubbish and the harassment is part of the psychological warfare. And it's continuous. It's not unique to Hebron. It's not unique to Nablus. This is a systematic behavior, and it goes up and down. Okay, if there is somebody throws stones from this refugee camp, communal punishment, or it's very easy to block the water, or block the electricity, prevent the rubbish from being. All tools available to the authority are deployed. And Norma, you asked what we could do inside and on the outside. On the inside, it's very little could be done at the moment. First, the education system is being hollowed. And this is systematic over the last 5 or 6 governments of the Palestinian Authority. They reduce the standards. So very little could be done. The disruption of schools is common. Today, I was reading on social media that there is complaints of how difficult the questions for the high school were. I speak with a prof from Birzeit University, and he said devaluation of certificates over the last 10 years was about 11% a year. So if we start 10 years ago, every year we devalue the value of the education content by 11%, by 11%. Now, he says to me that the education capacity is negligible. On the outside, we need to educate our young people on what's happening. And you are a prof, you are an academic, you have access to universities. Yeah, what happened in the USA, what happened in the United Kingdom over in universities is really hope, raises the expectation and raises the hope that the international community, especially in academia, is making the difference. Even though Columbia University have collapsed, but they still, some places fighting back. In Birmingham here, they took them to court and won. But there is a lot can be done in universities. And from your, are you in Spain, Norma? No, okay.
Thanks. I am in France, and I am also in Argentina. I have an international school, so high research. I am in research in astrophysics and in physics, and so you see, and so it's very important. If you allow me 1 second to...
Can we just let Fidel... Norma, can we just let Fidel finish first, and I'll bring you back in? Okay,
I will come back.
Yeah, we'll come back to you.
Yeah, on the outside universities, there is a lot can be done. And as well on the education system in Europe, to educate, we educate people a lot about the Second World War. We should demand that the Middle East history or the parts of the colonial history of the European powers should be educated in school. The Petrochemical Industries Union is, I'm not fully aware, there is very little petrochemical industry in West Bank or in Gaza. The petrochemical industry in West Bank and Gaza is the distribution industry. There is plastic industry in Hebron, and it's completely dependent on the Israeli custom union. You alluded to the money laundering and access to money. I think you didn't use the word laundering, but yeah, on one of the slides I put on is the contribution of the Palestinian diaspora is about 3 billion. It's a considerable part of the economy. Yes, there is a number of ways of getting money in, some of it controlled, some of it not. But majority of the aid, especially from Qatar or other Arab countries, come through Israeli banks. Whether it was to Hamas or to the Palestinian Authority or to the Palestinian NGOs, comes through Israeli banks, and it's highly regulated. So, and I don't know how much unregulated means of sending money are available. I think they haven't got the capacity to sustain the economy, if that's what you are asking.
Thank
Okay,
you.
Thanks, Fidel. We go to Matthew now, and then Roy, and then Norma, you can come back in after Roy. Matthew.
Yeah, hi, comrade. That's a very useful piece. I just a few more questions. In terms as I understand it, and certainly there's been a big scandal in terms of what's been said in the Israeli government and so on, is that the Israelis allowed essentially Qatar to finance virtually all of Gaza for a number of years, because obviously it avoided them doing it as an occupied place, and obviously allowed Qatar to transfer money, which obviously has a relationship to Hamas. I mean, the Hamas leadership has tended to relocate to, or section of the senior leadership tended to relocate to Qatar. So there's obviously that relationship between the two entities. What effect did that have in those terms? What you say about the left is also interesting. I mean, clearly, you can see in terms of the Gaza resistance that the multiple factions of the resistance that it still exists. That there is also, of course, clearly a split in Fatah itself. I mean, the people fighting in Gaza from the Fatah faction always traditionally denounce the Palestinian Authority, as you would expect. I mean, because obviously it's got no credibility. And you've also seen, say the resistance within the West Bank itself. Again, I mean, some part of it coming out of Fatah and directly in conflict with the Palestinian Authority itself. So clearly, all these political questions. And then, of course, obviously, in terms of in 47 Israel, you still have things like Kadash, which is the Communist Party front, which has some existence and even has people elected to the Knesset. So I mean, anything you can say in terms of the continued existence of left currents and how much strength they have in terms of what influence they have on the population would be good. Thanks.
Thanks, Matthew. Roy? Roy, you need to unmute yourself. We can't hear you.
Sorry. For the last 20 months, almost 20 months, the world, or much of the world, has been glued to the television sets and to news media, trying to follow what's going on in Palestine. And we see the genocide unfolding before our very eyes. And the populations of the world have reacted to it. Not the leadership, not the elites, but the ordinary people have been protesting throughout the world. The issue is that I just wanted to get to the tables you have of the GDPs and so on. For the last 20 months, we've had a state of genocide in Gaza, for instance, and a fair amount of the West Bank has also been laid waste. I don't know how reliable the figures are that are being projected at the moment, because one thinks in terms of Gaza as being in a state of non-productivity, of a state or a section which is trying to survive in a survival mode. The other issue that one could probably look at between 23, 25 is what percentage, if one could make out, of the settlers who are in the occupied sections of the West Bank, and possibly are they also included as part of their contributions or their productivity included in the GDP? That's one issue. The other is it has puzzled me that in the last 78 years or so in Palestine, we still have refugee camps in the West Bank and even in Gaza. And that brings in the whole issue of dependence on aid. It looks, because from the videos that one sees and the films, one gets the reports of the Israeli soldiers destroying arable farmlands and the plantations, even in Gaza. The vegetables and so on have been destroyed, so that there is a total dependence on food from outside, and I don't know what percentage or how much of the food which comes is nutritious food, given that there doesn't seem to be, everything seems to come in plastic bags or in bags and boxes, and in terms of fresh fruit and vegetables. So there's that dependence on it. Your other issue of where the left, whither the left, what has happened to the left, and I think that I'm glad, and in fact, I'm quite grateful to you for your analysis, because a lot of it is also attributable to South Africa. We've also had to go, or been faced with the same situation of much of what should have been the left had either joined the ruling party, have become religious, or have been swallowed up in NGOs. And that's as a whole cycle in itself. So here we are 35 years later, and we have that scenario here as well in terms of the left. So it's very hard to find the left in this country, for instance. Of course, in Palestine, one has to look at where are we now, because the imperialists have got plans for, and they have intentions for what they have been calling for quite a while of the day after. And the day after scenarios have been around from, well, from the leftists that are around would talk in terms of a complete dismantling of the state of Israel and having just a scenario where we would have a free Palestine, to the various variants of the two-stage solution, which in itself is very difficult, with Israel being what it is, with the support of the Americans and the European Union. One cannot see a free Palestine living side by side with a rampantly aggressive Israel. So I think that is something that perhaps if you could touch on that might help us a little bit, as well as the issue of what is probably one could call the elephant in the room of armed groups, which are also in control of the population of Gaza. I'll stop there. Thank you.
No, thanks, Roy. Temos?
Yes, one thing that I'm surprised by the whole situation as it develops is the fact that discussing Palestine and discussing the genocide and discussing what's happening in Israel and Palestine, one basic issue is missing, and that is what happens among the population of the West and among the population of the Arab countries, because it's the first time that I can think of that such barbarity and such ruthlessness and such cynicism is being seen on our televisions every day, and we are just sitting and watching and surrendering to the idea that whoever has the military might can do anything he likes. Nobody cares anymore to hide their sinister purposes. And this, I don't think it's sustainable. It's not sustainable in the West. I don't think that Western societies can really get used to this barbarity. So we see just some reaction to this is not yet big enough. But my feeling is that this situation is going to lead to great explosions, great resistance, and we'll have a different situation developing in some countries of the West, at least. It will only take one country for its government to be overthrown because of this reaction, to have events spreading out in the rest of in other countries as well, and that will force changes that we cannot even imagine. The situation is even more acute, I think, in the Arab countries. I mean, how long can Sisi stand there, listen to the Americans, follow their support of Israel in wiping out millions of Palestinians without doing anything? This cannot be sustainable. How long can the Jordanian regime keep shooting down missiles going to Israel, and its people just stay without anything? For how long can even the Iranian regime play this game of make believe battle with the Americans and manage to convince its people that it supports the Palestinian people? All these things, I think, is something that it's the only hope that we can have nowadays. So what we can do, I don't think it's only directed towards how do we give some humanitarian aid to the Palestinians. That's not the question. That has been bankrupted by the policies of the United States, the policies of Israel in all this period. What we should be looking for is what happens in our countries, what happens in our societies. I mean, Cyprus, it used to be one of the main supporters of the Palestinian people. Look at it now. The government of Cyprus is just working together with the government of Greece and the government of Egypt and the government of Israel, that is Netanyahu. They are the most vile supporters of what Israel is doing. Can this be sustained? I don't think so. So we should try to see where we can organize this resistance, in what countries we can do that, and try to do this, to have this clean break. And this, I think, is something that it's our duty, and we should not get bogged down in the details and the specifics of what's happening there. What's happening there is barbarity. There can be no more barbarity, no more vile barbarity than what's happening, and it's happening in front of each and every one of us in our televisions every night, every day.
Okay, thanks very much, Temos. Fidel, I expect you'd like to come back and respond. Can I
Okay.
just ask if do you need to screen share it? I can't see everything.
No,
at the moment.
I actually, I'll stop it because.
Okay, thank you. Yeah,
I was
I can see everybody now.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah. First, Matthew, you talked about the relationship between Hamas and Qatar. I think it's well documented, and it wasn't under the table. It was over the table, under the eyes of the international community, under the gaze of the Israelis as well. I think everybody and their aunties, they knew how strong and the details of the relationships inside the Middle. There is nothing hidden. Everybody knows the size of the support and what is it for. When we had the first pictures coming from Gaza, Gaza had I can't remember how many hospitals, 6 or 7 universities, very well tarmacked streets, tower blocks. This didn't happen overnight by magic. It happened by phenomenal amount of money and investment that came into Gaza, and it was all documented. It didn't come through tunnels between Egypt and Gaza. It came through Ashdod. All the building material, all the infrastructure came from Ashdod, from Haifa, into Gaza, and was paid for by real money coming on official means. You asked about the resistance in the West Bank. there is no real. I'm sorry to disappoint. There is what is so-called the resistance, whether it's in Jenin or in Fana refugee camp or in Tubas. It's an oppression. You know, the people of Jenin do not call on the Israelis to come and shoot them. The Israelis turn up and demolish the infrastructure, kill, and sometimes there is small fire back. So it's instead of calling it a resistance, it's refusing to die with your hands down sometimes. You asked about the left undercurrents. Unfortunately, what's happening in the Palestinian economy when the average or the GDP is about $3,000 or less, and the Israeli GDP is $50,000 or more, on the Palestinian side, the left is completely demolished, and they just living hand to mouth, or people living hand to mouth. So they haven't got very, the basics of time to be engaged. On the Israeli side, they're doing very well. Thank you very much indeed, out of the current circumstances. So the left on the Israeli side is the intellectual left, the academic left still exist, but not politically effective. So if you go inside academia in Israel, you find people who are on the left and genuine, but they're not effective. They're not organized. The Israeli society did very well of the current situation. They are some of the highest paid in the world, certainly the highest paid in the Middle East, comparative to Qatar. So they're not under any pressure. There isn't the undercurrents that, and the labor movement, the Israeli labor movement, which was a sister of the British labor movement, is completely finished. Electorally flawed, intellectually flawed, and basically in its basic premise, it's a Zionist ideology. So I'm not counting on the left inside Israel, really, or in West Bank or Gaza. Roy asked about the GDP figures, and that's why I put them on the screen. These figures, to the best of my knowledge, and I'm relying here on the World Bank and some Palestinian statistical organization, and if you trust the World Bank, I don't. But they are at my best, and I would say they are estimates. The settlers are not included in the West Bank and Gaza GDP. They are included in the Israeli GDP. Israel, when it gives statistics, it includes this. It doesn't label the settlers as a different manufacturing entity or farming entity. They are Israeli. From their point of view, they are Israelis. And the Palestinians don't have access to their figures. So the settlers are not included in these figures on the Palestinian side. In terms of, as I said earlier, the quality of the food the Palestinians are receiving, I think the slide I showed, the Palestinians have 3 or 4 days food security, wherever they are, not just in Gaza. Every morning, if you go now to Hebron or to Al Khalil or to Ramallah, every morning there is about 4 o'clock in the morning, there is trucks delivering food from inside Israel into West Bank cities. And if you go into any village, as a village of 400 people, you'll find the little shop selling Israeli ice cream or rice packaged in Nablus, but imported through Isdod. So the food capacity is very limited. And if Israel shuts the borders or the checkpoints, yes, in West Bank, in the villages, I estimate 4 to 5 days. In the cities, it's a lot worse than that. The other thing is the energy. In one switch, and it happens every July when the weather is really hot, the Israelis, and this is not new, the Israelis could reduce the power coming into West Bank. So fridges, all food-related industries get suspended. So food security and food quality is in question. And you've got the right to ask this question. You ask, what is it to be done? Or where do we go from here? I think we collectively can find an answer. Whether we can influence our political masters in the West, I'm not sure. I think the moral backbone of Western governments have disappeared. As Thomas have said, that we were witnessing this genocide on our screens, and our prime minister here, Starmer, says Israel has got the right to defend itself, as if killing children is defending oneself. And you asked another question about the armed groups. These armed groups have influence on the population, but they don't have real military influence or in a balancing way against the Israeli army. And they do use their arms in sometimes unreasonable way. So there is extortion going on, there is protection going on, there is abuse going on, and when there is no reference, these things happen. Yes, these armed groups are, and they are, I suspect, part of the psychological warfare that Israel allows them to. Most of the armament in the Palestinian hands are bought from Israeli sources or the Palestinian Authority sources. So these groups, in my view, they work on demoralizing, undermining the social fabric of the Palestinian community. Thomas, what can be done, or how is going the reaction in the West and in the Arab countries? On the Arab countries, I'm afraid I'm going to disappoint you. My expectations of this Arabic street now are very, very low. The Arabic street is just, exited what is known as the Arab Spring. Most of the Arab streets are busy absorbing what happened between 2011 and now. And if we look at Iraq, Syria, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, they are in flux. So the Jordanians look at themselves and say, hey, we are lucky. At least we don't have, so the sort of what's happening to the west of the Jordan River is in the fridge at the moment because of the dynamics in Libya, the dynamics in Syria, the dynamics in Lebanon. My expectation of the Arab street is very, very, very low. On the other hand, my hope of where we are in the West is very high. A couple of days ago, we had in New York, Mamdani being selected in to be the mayor of New York. Now, anybody who knows the dynamics in New York would never believe that a pro-Palestinian Muslim immigrant from Uganda, who not many people in New York would know how to pronounce his name, have got the Democratic nomination. And the same thing can't happen in Europe or in Britain, at least, because what I call the sausage machine, it would eliminate that from happening here, but it still happened in New York. So yeah, in the West, I think what's happening in universities, what's happening in, hopefully there will be, I think in Spain, there is a new political attitude, very, even the rise of the right in Europe is not undermining, in a way, the sympathy for the Palestinians and the importance of this issue. There is a considerable rise of the right throughout Western Europe, but still the Palestinian issue, the moral issue, if you like, and the capacity of our governments to pull the wool over the community or the people's eyes is reducing. As you said, governments are in Cyprus, in Greece, and Egypt and Israel trying to dig for oil and gas on the shores of Cyprus. But I see on the screen that Cypriots are saying free, free Palestine and wrapping themselves with a Palestinian flag. And there is more, community action in Cyprus than anywhere else, or much, much, much before. So the hope is on the street in the West, really.
Okay, thanks, Fidel. Just before I bring Enrico in, I found it very hard to see how Qatar squares up having an American airbase in its country if it's doing all the other things. I found that very strange indeed. So maybe you could comment on that when you you answer your next set of questions. Enrico.
Okay. First thing, I apologize for my terrible English, but if you don't understand me, just call me back. So
You're quite clear, Enrico. I think. Do go on.
What I want to say probably is something different, in the sense that I would like just to leave in the side all the ideology and the specification, of what is happening. For me, until now, we didn't really touch I don't know how we said in English, but the real matter, what really is happening in the Middle East. And that is all the cause. That is not important for me that in this moment, talking about, also it is important because our organization, for example, I don't know how many container of first aid, food, medicine we send to Gaza. I don't know if they arrive or not. They disappear on the way. So what the situation of the Palestinian people is important and we care about it. But the situation, we don't talk about that. What we have to talk is to understand and realize why these things happen. It's not happened just now, but is more than 70 years, even before that happened. Palestinians have been used by the bourgeoisie of every Arab country, and not only, and they've been, what I can say, the people to be killed, the people to destroy. They've been used as a first front against Israel, against the United States. What is happening in the Middle East, in my opinion, is a big conflict and a long conflict, a long time, of regional power. Now, every country, not every, but there are countries in the area that they want the supremacy. They want to control the Middle East. We're talking about Israel with the support of the United States. We're talking about Turkey. We talk Saudi Arabia. We talk about Iran. So that is the real matter, is a war of supremacy of the regional power and international power. Now we have also China that is intervening. In a different way, United States is using the Middle East as a way to try to come up from the situation of power that they had before. They lost, they did in Vietnam and they lost. They did in Iraq and they lost. They did in Afghanistan, they lost. And now they try with Israel against Iran. That is the political question. What I have to say, just to be short, is, in my opinion, and in our opinion, is that is not any international order, is not the United Nations, is not any the higher court, etc., that can solve the problem. The only problem that can solve could be utopistic, could be far away from the moment, but I don't think it's less utopistic that believe that you can make the peace in the Middle East. Is the working class. It's right to unite and make the working class of the area to fight against their own bourgeoisie. The Israeli working class against the Israeli bourgeoisie, the Palestinian against the Arab bourgeoisie, that they use them all the time. And that is only the working class can. I don't say they have to do the revolution now, is something really, you cannot imagine a situation like that. But it's the only path that we can follow to try to solve once forever the problem in the Middle East. And I know I have a short time, I don't want to take your time, but we publish a book in 4 languages, so you can find in French, in English, in Spanish, and in Italian, that is called The War in Gaza. And I advise you, because it's a different point of view to see the situation, how we see the situation in the Middle East. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Enrico. There's no more hands up at the moment. Norma, I interrupted you before. Have you got further points you'd like to make? Norma?
Thanks. Meanwhile, many important points have been introduced in the discussion or recalled. I just answering perhaps to Fadel, I mean, and of course, when I ask in my question what we can do from what we can do from outside, and in particular, not only one of the point, universities and university links or networks to treat the problem we are talking about, and particularly how to transform, change, and help Palestinian people. So, further introduce or just make this point, which in part answer my question too, is we need to teach in the school, in the universities, in the high schools, this war and the situation of Palestine in the same, we need to teach, to introduce in the teaching, in the same way, Second World is taught. The same way said, the way as have been accepted in the history to teach about, to talk about, we need to introduce that, and I completely agree. I think that is possible. And in France, there need to be done in an, say, intelligent way. Many and several of the teachers have touched this problem, perhaps within particular points, have been attacked or amonested of anti-Semitism or doing politics or introducing to the students ideological influence and so on. I am talking about facts in France. But nevertheless, I mean, this problem need, I mean, the teaching or the acceptation that this is part of a history need to be well treated, and it's very important. And in my opinion, I mean, I am talking from inside, it's realistic to try and to develop that. And I finish because it could be many. I take this. Temos said how we can, I mean, also touching several of the other points then after introducer of touched, how we can live in the Western or in our countries, in our societies, with this situation. We know genocide in Palestine, how long this can, and well, I say Vietnam War, I mean, if we take some perspective of parallelism, Vietnam War extended for, say, averaging 20 years. And the fact is how this public opinion, Matthew said that this public resistance or opinion against, not from the government, but from the population, supporting Palestine and so on, is true, but is not enough, or is not still is not enough to create some state organization. And I think that we must also take into account the reaction of the working classes. For instance, I am talking here in Marseille, the dockers have make a strike for not supplying the arms in Marseille, for instance, from the port, not supplying, not acting, not working for supplying the arms which were sent to Israel. So I think that these kind of actions we need to take into account at different levels of the working classes, of the universities. I mean, there are different levels to go from a just manifestation in the street to a higher level of organization, networks, and actions. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Norma. Finn, you want to come back in?
Yeah, thanks. Just a couple of two brief questions for Fad. First of all, I want to say it's very refreshing to hear a socialist perspective on the questions being raised, and I want to thank Fad for that. But the first question is with regard to the settlements. The settlements themselves are sites for services like banking and tourism, and also for manufacture. And many Palestinian workers work in the settlements. When I visited a settlement close to Jerusalem, during the visit, the settlers were telling us the great favor they were doing to Palestinians, offering them work.
Soda cream.
So anyway, the question is this: could the settlements become a site for struggle? Could Palestinian workers organize as workers and as class within class organizations like unions to fight and to resist the development of industry and services in the settlements? So could the settlements be a site for struggle? And the second question relates to the situation with Hamas and Islamic Jihad. The media has been reporting here over the longest period now the fall in support for Hamas within Gaza. Generally, now the support is probably rising in the West Bank, but within Gaza, there's a fall in support that's been reported. Now, Hamas and Islamic Jihad emerged during the time when the PLO was being discredited, particularly during following the defeat in Lebanon, when they were banished and Arafat went to live in Tunisia. And then Hamas and Islamic Jihad emerged, but they emerged as Islamic forces. Originally, actually, Hamas was the Muslim Brotherhood, not so much now. There was a very uneven development and lots of conflict back and forth. and Hamas had a new charter in 2017, which altered some of their ideas. And it didn't abolish the earlier charter, but they changed some of the ideas to try and soften the image. But nonetheless, we've been reading here that Hamas has been losing support, popular support within Gaza. Is that the case? Is that true? Will it continue? And what would the outcome of that lack of support be? Islamic Jihad was, I suppose, in a militant stance, Islamic stance before the emergence of Hamas, but it must be experiencing a similar situation. And I would say, just in conclusion, just as a comment, the Hamas resistance must be the first resistance movement in history. Now, I'm not attributing the problems in Gaza to Hamas, far from it. The problems were caused by Israel. But Hamas must be the first movement in history where their own country could be taken off the map as a result of the perspective and the approach that they and Islamic Jihad take to the struggle. Now, that's not to say that Israel isn't responsible. It's a comment I'd like to just kind of add. What are the possible outcomes following the fall in support that is being reported with regard to Hamas?
Thanks, Finn. Anybody else? Right, back to you for... Oh, hang on. Roger, do you want to go first, or should we let Fidel respond?
Mine is a very quick point, so maybe I could make
right,
that.
Yeah.
No, I wanted to comment on the issues that Themos raised and also Enrico. I think it's a common view held by all of us that the only solution to the problem of Gaza or the problem of Palestine or the problems of workers anywhere in the world is through the working class. We cannot hope for any liberal, generous, kind of benevolent intervention by any capitalist force. And in that connection, I was interested, I don't know if comrades saw that, I think it was Matthew, posted a link which I've just opened, which is about international views of Israel. And they surveyed 24 countries, and they found that out of 24 countries that they surveyed, 20 of them have an overwhelmingly unfavorable attitude. The populations have an unfavorable attitude towards Israel. In a number of countries, including many where the governments are firmly and implacably supportive of Israel, that more than 3/4 of the population in several countries, comrades can look at the link, I won't read them out, that are hostile to Israel and supportive of the Palestinian cause. It's interesting that that one of the few countries where there isn't an overwhelming majority in support of the Palestinians is India. But that, of course, is in the even there, it's kind of more or less half and half. But even there, we have to bear in mind the overwhelmingly communal attitude of the majority party of the government of Modi, the anti-Muslim bias, which would largely account for that. But I mean, when you look at the traditions of the working class, we don't have to go back to the interventions against the counter-revolution in Russia after the Russian Revolution. We don't have to go back to the International Brigade in Spain, which was tens of thousands, I think, of volunteers came, and many gave their lives in defense of the Spanish working class. But more recently, I mean, the anti-apartheid movement, which really played the boycott movement worldwide and the political pressure from working class organizations played a large part in the downfall of the apartheid regime. And it seems to me, as Themos said, even though there's a shock and a delayed reaction, it seems to me inconceivable that the latent hostility towards the Israeli government will not actually manifest itself in direct action, in terms of boycott. Of course, there's already the BDS movement, but that could really gather momentum and take on much bigger proportions in the future. So I think from that point of view, and I mean, Enrico made the same point, and I think that would be the attitude of all of us. For the reason why we're the Workers' International Network is because despite the suppression and oppression of and the impotence largely of the working class at the present time because of the rise of extremely reactionary, progressive, and regressive and communal regimes throughout the world, but nevertheless, the working class actually is the solution. And I think we can have confidence without being sort of dismissing the obstacles on the road. I think we're going to see, as Thomas said, there's going to be an explosion coming.
I'd just like to follow on actually from that, what Fidel said, that the answer is on the streets. That somebody may contradict me, but I do not, I'm not aware of, not during the course of my life or in history, of street demonstrations on the scale and the width of the pro-Palestinian demonstrations. All the actions of the governments, the UK government, to try and censor it. That actually the major broadcasting country in this country is absolute out and out liar. And censors what's going on. People have no idea at all what is going on. All the sort of censorship that's going on. You know, the business over the that Irish group, whatever they're called, or who they won't broadcast their acts at Glastonbury. I've never seen anything like that before. I don't know whether other people agree with me, but I just think it's outstanding. And I've got to say that in an absolute tragic situation where you hear speech after speech after speech of the most appalling atrocities going on, that is the one bit of hope I've got. That people and young people are coming out. They're not just calling free Palestine, they're calling for intifada. They're calling for an end to imperialism. And that gives me some hope. I don't know if anybody else agrees with me on that, but that's my view of things. Enrico, you wanted to come in again.
Sorry, my microphone was off. No, I don't want, I have impression that probably I have been not understanding, didn't explain myself well, because I'm not talking about mass demonstration. I think the mass demonstration in history have shown that they work nothing. If you just, well, I'm old, not everybody can remember, but in the 60s, in the United States, have been an enormous mass demonstration during the year against the nuclear power. That didn't stop the United States of America to be a nuclear power, the stronger. I remember I was in London, the demonstration against the first war in Iraq was I don't know, they quoted nearly 1 million people in the street in London.
2 million.
2 million. 2 million. It was enormous. And that didn't stop Tony Blair to make the package and start the war in Iraq. At that time, I remember where one of the slogans was, "Is not my war, not in my name." And some organization in England, they were telling that because was an illegal war, because the United Nations didn't approve it. Now, my question was with them. I said, why? If the United Nations approve it, is a right war. The war is made by the capitalist society between the different bourgeoisie against the working class to maintain the power. So for me, it's not any right war. The only war right, in my opinion, is the revolution that is done by the working class and not about other. So when I'm talking about only the working class can solve the problem in the future, in the long future, but it's the only opportunity that the working class have in the Middle East, and not only in the Middle East, is that they fight for a better society, the working class. I'm talking about the working class, in that case, from Israeli, the working class from Palestinian, the working class of Turkey, the working class of Iran. That is the only over. After, if they do in a demonstration of 2 million people, that doesn't count, because the power, who have the power now, the superpower, they do what they want. And so the longer path is to be able to work patiently, to organize the working class in this country, and not only in this country, because as I heard before, it's true, the people of the port of Marseille and even Genoa, our comrade in Genoa, they stopped the ship that were carrying weapons for Israel. That is a first step, is a step internationally. The international working class can join or can create some little damage to the imperialism, etc. But until we don't organize that, if you look in what's happening in Palestine, in West Bank, in Cisjordania, etc., is the colony of Jewish. They take, they're like a leopard. They take a part of the best land because they want the best land. How is possible to solve the problem in that situation? They have backing from the army, the Israel army. The West Bank doesn't have any army, have only some organization or people organized with weapons. How can you think that they can fight against a military power like Israel? The Jewish, they live in the war. They go to the beach at 3 o'clock. At 5 o'clock, they get the weapon and they go shooting other people. So that is what I want to say. It's just a puntualization that they want to make. It's not with the government of the European. They can make a situation for a short period of peace. But in the way, the problem is that they fight for a regional power to control the area, and that will continue. And we don't have the strength. I don't know if you're aware of the imperialism of Kautsky. Kautsky, he was thinking that you can control imperialism. You can't. Imperialism you cannot control until will be and will happen one day the possibility of an international revolution. But for doing that, we have to work day by day to organize a working class party internationally. If not, we can. I am old enough. I remember since I was baby, we were talking and were crying for the problem in the Middle East, before in Vietnam. Sorry, is my granddaughter that is making an argument. I don't know if you can hear it. So, and I stop on that. I hope that I have been understand and what I was meaning in now. Thank you.
Enrico, your English is extremely good. Don't worry about
Sorry?
not being understood. Your English is
Sorry?
very, very good.
Not really.
Yes, it is. Thanks for that
After
contribution.
living in 25 years in England, my English was supposed to be better.
It's good. Right, thanks for that final contribution. Right, we're getting towards the end of the meeting time now, so I'm going to ask Fidel to answer the questions and sum up, which will end the discussion. Are there any other quick questions or anybody wants to ask before he does that? No? No? Okay, Fidel. Do you want to?
Thank you, comrade. First, to your question, why there is an American base in Qatar, it's really beyond me why the Americans want a base in Qatar and why the Qataris want an American base in Qatar other than imperialist ambitions on the American side and wanting to be the good boy on the Qatari side, they want to please the master. So is there a strategic, logical reason for why a country would want military bases outside its borders? This is the only explanation is imperialism. To my small mind. Enrico, your English is fantastic, and you made me feel good because I used to say this all the times when I arrived in the UK some long time ago. Sorry, I don't understand you. Can you understand me? And in most times they understood me, but I could not understand them. That's a problem. Why is we have this problem in the Middle East? In my view, it's not moral politics, it's power politics. The United Nations is a fig leaf for the most powerful imperialist countries. It's not an effective organization. It's meaningless, really. And what's happening is Israel is delivering for the capitalist, greedy companies. They're delivering a service, and the people who are dying are the Palestinian young people or the Palestinian people and Israelis or Jewish boys. These are the people who are dying, and the people who are gathering the so-called the fruit of this illegal occupation and illegal war is people who make guns, people who sell guns, people who sell hospitals and regeneration. There are questions already: who's going to build Beirut, who's going to build Tel Aviv, who's going to build Tehran, who's going to build Gaza. Big contractors, whatever their names are, already preparing themselves for the fruits of this illegal war. I think Finn asked about the settlements and the Palestinian workers, whether there will be a struggle between the working classes and the people who own the means of production inside the settlements. Yes, we would love that to happen, but that couldn't be the case because the Palestinian workers don't have rights. They are not regulated labor inside these settlements. They are daily labor. They brought in on the gate in the morning and kicked out at 5 o'clock on the gate, and they searched on the way in, searched on the way out. They don't have the capacity to organize and become unionized and thus have impact. And unfortunately, over the last few months, this labor have been replaced by either automation or foreign workers. You asked another question about the popularity of Hamas in Gaza. I have no idea. The Palestinian Authority keeps saying that people are organizing against Hamas, but I cannot see any evidence of that. The people of Gaza have very little alternatives. They've been let down by everybody. So I'm not sure if they still believe in Hamas or they ever believed in Hamas or if that belief have been reduced. Palestinians by nature are liberal believers. So they are not, the religion belief in that part of the world historically is individual, not organized religion. So I think the success of Hamas came because of the failure of others. If there is a success story elsewhere, Hamas will become, or the religious organization will become less of a problem. Enrico, you asked, you suggested something about the working classes rising up in Iran, in the Middle East, and in the West. I agree with you in the West, but the working classes in the Middle East and Iran and these places, it's not possible with a GDP of $3,000. And that nowadays people are busy making ends meet rather than organizing. And believe me, if you hoping for a working class organizing in Jordan, where the average income is $4,000, we're going to wait for a long, long time for it to happen. The possibility of that with a regime like the current Jordanian regime, it's the alternative to it is anarchy. And that's the model which is Israel is pushing for, and the West is pushing for in these countries. However, working classes in Britain, in the USA, in France, they have a great potential. And yes, we on the left here in the West, we have a greater responsibility in organizing. And I agree with I think Roger agree on that. The issue of the attitude to Israel, I think there has been a vote recently in the United Nations, and the only country that opposed the existence or the establishment of a Palestinian state is America. And if we look at the population, every other country either abstained or supported the existence or the recognition of a Palestinian state. So it's the bloc really on both opposing a Palestinian state and the phenomenal support for Israel is in the United States of America. Even here in the UK or in France, there is a lukewarm support for the idea, official lukewarm support, a great support on the street. But the government, they would always say, oh, we believe in the two-state solution, when they very well know that the two-state solution is giving the license to the Israelis to do what they did, as we saw. Is there anything else I didn't? Norma, you talked about, yeah, I agree with you. We need to organize, we need to educate, build up courses, maybe on voluntary basis, fight for them to become part of the curriculum, but education, information is the way forward.
Enrico, very briefly, so you've got your hand up again. Don't forget to unmute yourself, though. We won't be able to hear you at all.
Very briefly, I never said that is easy. And for what is our experience, for example, during the colonial cup in Greece in the 60s, we organize and we develop our organization in Greece. Now, this day, we have not a lot, but we have a few camarades that have remained in Russia. Most of them, they came when started the war with Ukraine. We made them come into Italy, the more exposed, but they still working in Russia. And you know that working now in Russia as a communist is not easy. The point is that for us is the only solution. The only solution is to make the working class in the Middle East organize, join together against their bourgeoisie. It's not easy, but for us, it's the only solution. After there are other paths, other way, we don't believe in other way. We believe in, well, we consider ourselves Marxist, Leninist, and we know with the history, because if you're talking about the GDP, the money that they have, the working class, well, in Russia they were peasant, they were poor. It's not that stop. Could be difficult, but so if we're talking about income, the United States of America working class is supposed to be the most revolutionary in the world. Instead, they're not. So there are difficulties, but in my opinion, is the only way. Sorry to keep you so long.
Okay, thanks, Enrico. Do you want to comment again, Fidel, or have you sort of said anything?
I agree with Enrico that the working class struggle is the solution to a lot of problems. But for the Middle East working class at the moment, to expect more from them is probably we're going to wait for a long time because of what we see happening, what they see happening. I speak to people, I speak to trade unions in Jordan, and they say, look, what happened next door in Syria is 4 million people outside the country. I don't know how many millions got killed. We not in a position to do much more. So again, in Egypt, when 2011 revolution happened, I gave a talk in one of the biggest trade unions there, and my prediction was at that time is the only people who are organized and ready are not the trade unions, it's the Muslim Brotherhood. And they, unfortunately, a few days later, a few months later, I was proven, I wish I didn't predict it, because the working class in the relationship, the working relationship between the people who are in is not the same as it is in the West, or as would I think the expectations are too high. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, thanks, Fidel. We haven't time for any more contributions, I'm afraid, but we're pretty much out of time now. So I'd like to thank Fidel for leading a very, very, very good, very informative discussion. I'm sure a lot of us have learned a lot from this. So thank you very much for joining us, Fidel, and thank you to everybody for coming to the meeting, and particularly to those who contributed. So as usual, we will now go to Roger about next week's meeting.
Yes.
Can I thank you all for listening and your interest, and Roger for the opportunity? Thank you.
Okay, well,
Thanks,
I
Fidel.
also like to say to thank Comrade Fadl, really emphatically. He's introduced, well, he's given us a lot of information. I learned a lot from his talk, but also I think it was one of the most stimulating and comprehensive discussions that we've had. And that's, we have a high standard generally. I'd also say to Comrade Enrico, we're very glad that you are now, you started participating in our meetings. But I think you'll find that all of us share the same confidence in the working class and the same determination. We believe that the working class is the only force that has any possibility of changing society and of building a proper human future that has any kind of stability or viability. So thanks to all the comrades for coming. I was very pleased to see also that we had comrades from 11 countries at the meeting today, most of them participating in the meeting. Next week we have a very important meeting. We're talking about the political developments in the USA, and particularly the prospects of working class resistance. We saw demonstrations of 5 million people against the ruthless and brutal Trump regime. We've got two outstanding Marxists who are going to be leading that discussion. Comrade Jack, who I think was here for most of the meeting today, who's a veteran trade union militant and Marxist, and also Comrade Richard, who runs the spectacular and amazing blog Facts for Working People, which actually has a worldwide readership and is just outstanding. So that's next week. And also I'd like to say because the question of the Iranian working class was brought up in towards the end of the meeting. In 2 weeks' time, we're very proud to welcome Comrade Aman, who also is here today, who can give us an absolutely authentic and on-the-spot report on the developments within the Iranian society, in particular after the horrific onslaught that they've experienced in the last couple of weeks. So I hope all the comrades will continue to come. Comrade Fadal, I hope that you'll come regularly to our meetings. We meet every Sunday, 4 p.m. and we hear comrades from around the world. And right, see all the comrades again. Thanks very much.
Bye.
Thank you.
Goodbye.